Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Vitality Hour here on BYP TV. My name is Dr. Jill Barham, and I'd like to welcome you on location to the beautiful city of Nottingham in the UK. So today I, as usual, have a very special guest with me. But before I introduce you to my lovely friend and colleague, I'd like to just talk to you about something that is in the news. So some of you know that I like to be able to cover things that are current, things that are top of the news, either in the UK or in the US, or in fact all over the world. And my mind has been turned this week because to an issue regarding mental health. And one of the reasons for that is that the lady that I'm going to introduce you to, although I've known her for quite a little time and we've actually co-authored a book together, I met her at a mental health event here in Nottingham just a few weeks ago. And so what I wanted to do, because you know I like facts and figures, so what I wanted to be able to do was to give you a little bit of an overview before I talk to my special guest about the issues and some of the kind of landscape of how mental health looks in the UK and in fact in the Western world in the moment. So if we're specifically going to talk about children, 1 in 10 children are affected by mental health problems at the moment. And sadly, major depressive disorder affects 3% of children aged as young as 6 to 12 years of age, and 6% of teenagers, so in other words those the children that are 13 to 18, are affected by major depressive disorder. Looking at the kind of causes that may well have impacted or be impacting these children at the moment, and why we have this increase in mental illness. And for some of these children, it's even things like having a new baby in the house, maybe moving house or moving school can be the catalyst for feeling anxious or becoming worried or depressed. Obviously, things like having a close family member die, or even, we know that divorce has a major impact on children at this young age. But there are other things that may be a little less obvious to you that are impacting the mental health of these young children. That may be something like having a long-term physical illness and the impact of that on them, and also on the family dynamics, of course. Whether or not they are one of the children, these fantastic children that we have, that are carers for an adult. So in other words, they're taking on adult responsibilities at an age where you wouldn't ordinarily expect that to happen. Maybe they've got a parent with mental health issues themselves, or they're dealing with a parent with substance abuse or whatever. Or indeed, perhaps they've been bullied or sexually or physically abused. The way that this kind of effect happens and shows up or manifests up into how these young people behave, or how these people are experiencing mental health, is that depression is on the rise, and especially our teenagers are increasingly suffering with depression. It may manifest in self-harming, for example. So that for some young people, it's the only way that they can manage that intense physical and emotional pain. They may suffer, amazingly, things like PTSD. If they've had a trauma, if they've suffered abuse, if they've had a death in the family, PTSD is actually a recognised condition now that can affect young children and adults. It may manifest into eating disorders such as bulimia and anorexia, or in fact it's thought in some corners now that ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and ADD, also it's thought that those conditions are related to trauma and distress that is in the household. And there is also a kind of general anxiety that's going on as well, and that's particularly for children that are more sensitive. And we do know that there are children that are more sensitive than others. If you've got children, or indeed if you ever have been a child yourself, you will know that some people feel things more acutely than others. And those sensitive children are typically the ones that are more kind of subject to change, or to changes in their family circumstances, or into friendships, or into schools and so on. There are increasing numbers of antidepressants that are being prescribed even for these young children. This is a report from the NHS that took figures from April 2015 to March 2016. Over 64,000 children were prescribed antidepressant and anti-anxiety medication, and this included 315 children that were aged 6 or under. Now, there is a slight number of those where those kind of medications may be used for things like epilepsy or bedwetting, for example. But nevertheless, this is a huge number, and of course, some people have a real worry over the use of these big pharmacological drugs on the development of these children. So, this is a growing problem, and one of the influences that I'm going to talk a little bit about today, I know with my special guest, is apart from all of those kind of change things and traumas, is social media, particularly for teenagers, is having a massive part to play on the manifestation of depression and anxiety in these children. And my special guest, Jackie Wilson. Hello, Jackie.
Hi.
So nice to see you. If the mountain won't come to Muhammad, the Muhammad goes to the mountain. Is that the expression?
Something like that.
You live in Nottingham,
I do.
Don't you?
Yeah.
So instead of bringing you all the way to lovely Chelsea, we decided that we would come and interview you here.
Thank you.
I know.
It's lovely to have you here.
I know. So Jackie, you are the founder of Empower Education.
Yeah, I am.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. You were around and you saw my kind of introduction where I talked a lot about mental health with young children.
Absolutely.
And I know that that's really pertinent to what you do. But you actually do a little bit more than that as well. And we're going to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about that today. Before we sort of start with your business and what you do and the plans that you've got coming up at the moment, which are very exciting, would you share with us a little bit about your kind of point, your journey to starting your Empower Education? But what led you to that point?
Well, the point was my mental health. It was something that I'd suffered with from a teenager, went through my 20s, went through my 30s, gradually getting worse. As a youngster, I was fine, I was quite a happy youngster. And what I didn't realise then was when I was 10, my uncle died very tragically, and there was just no support for me. Nobody's fault. It was my mum's brother, and
you were quite close to him, weren't you?
I was very close to him. Yeah, we were very, very connected, and used to go and visit him quite often.
Yeah,
and that massively impacted me. But it took me 30 years to realise that.
Wow.
Obviously, my mum, my dad were distraught, my grandparents.
They were all grieving too.
They were all grieving,
yeah.
And they didn't consider that I might be suffering. And I didn't obviously realise at that time. I suppressed all my emotions.
Yeah. And
the grief was obviously needing to come out, and it kind of manifested itself in a different way. And it manifested itself through anger. So I was a very angry teenager, which impacted me and my self-esteem, because I thought I was the bad one.
Yes.
I didn't, I was different to everybody else, and I was the only one that was really angry, and so it really impacted me. And
your family, presumably.
Absolutely.
No doubt they were confused. What happened to their little girl?
Oh yeah, totally. But that was related to the grief, and I had no clue. I thought it was me.
So when did you discover that? What work did you do on yourself to discover that?
About 18 years ago, I embarked on a bit of I did yoga. Yoga was my saving grace.
Okay.
I started with yoga. That was something I found and I'm very passionate about. And I did that, and I've trained in Reiki. I sort of entered the personal development, holistic world.
Yes.
About that time, and it took me a long time, but I was, I suppose, on a journey to discover myself without knowing it. I kind of felt very drawn into that holistic arena.
And did you ever take any medication, or did anybody diagnose you with depression or anxiety? Did you ever go down the pharmaceutical route?
Almost. I was very, very, very close. I'd gone to the doctors, I think it might have been 12, 15 years ago, I don't remember the exact time, and in the doctor's surgery the doctor said, "You are depressed, I'm going to put you on medication," and I said no. I didn't believe that was right for me. Well, I actually said I'm not depressed. I didn't take that. I wouldn't take that diagnosis. There's something in me that just wouldn't do that. I went for counselling for a little while, and I did do some training. I did some basic training to be a counsellor. I didn't further that, but that was something I was like, okay, this has made a difference. So I've done various things that have led me to a point where actually I did a whole year-long self-development course, and wasn't just a self-development course, it was a rip you open, help you face yourself, massive impact.
Yeah, some really deep
realizations
work,
of 360 in my world to help me see how I could step out of the negativity and that low state of mind I was in.
Yeah, because you get caught up in a whirlwind, don't you? It's this
absolutely.
spiral that just goes down, and for a lot of people it's very difficult to even consider being pulled.
Oh, I hated myself. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like the fact that I wasn't a great mother. I was a very angry mother, and that wasn't great for my kids when they were younger. And so, it was great to be able to come through that.
And when was the light bulb moment that this was related to the 10-year-old you?
It was about maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
So relatively recent.
Maybe a bit longer.
Yeah,
Relatively recent. I was doing some. I've trained as a Psych K facilitator, which is kinesiology for core beliefs. There's a lot to it, but the focus that I put on it is the core beliefs. And we were working through some stuff, and I realised, light bulb moment, that when we were doing a realisation, because you do muscle testing to kind of get to your issues, and it appeared. It was so related because I could track it back, and I was like, that's what it was. I was like, wow, all that time, all that anger, all that depression, it was related to grief manifesting itself in a different way.
So it's a bit like anybody who has any kind of illness or mental disturbance or whatever. You feel so relieved when you've kind of understood it, or you've got a diagnosis. That moment of going, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because at that moment, whether you choose the kind of allopathic route, which is conventional medicine, or whether you choose a more holistic route, that's a very personal thing. But at least at that point, that understanding gives you the kind of impetus, or the what's the word? A kind of permission, if you like, to say, well, I've got something tangible now that I can focus on, that I need, that I can heal. Like, there's probably some other stuff as well, but actually, here we go. This kind of makes sense to me now, and that very often for a lot of people that I meet is like you. Yeah. The point at which I've done all of this work, and nothing's really kind of made much sense. Nothing's shifted really until that particular technique or therapy or whatever it might be, because one size doesn't fit all, as you've described. You had to go through an awful lot of journey, different pathways until it was the right one for you, and the one that actually put you onto that sort of healing journey. It's really interesting. So have you always then, since that point, been interested in that kind of mental health for children? Was that when you started thinking, well, this is really what I want to concentrate on?
Before that, that realisation happened after I started what I'm doing. I've been a children's yoga teacher for 15 years, and for me that was about helping them raise their self-belief. Unknowingly, that was a projection. I needed to have my own self-belief.
Anybody that does any kind of work like this will know it's just a reflection on what you need. So on that whole year self-development course, that was when I realised that, which really overwhelmed me. But then I also discovered that actually my purpose is to bring this knowledge that I'd gained
to children, because I needed to know that when I was younger.
Yeah.
I really needed to understand myself
Yes.
and what was going off inside of me to be able to navigate, as I say, life more easily.
Yes. So to have people that are in your arena with your expertise that have actually gone through the same thing, and I
Yeah.
think that's the key to this,
Yeah.
isn't it? Is because you can obviously be much more empathetic. Is what's so important for, you know, how we are going to change the world, and particularly how we're going to be able to influence
Yes.
our younger people and stop this overwhelming barrage of depression and anxiety, self-harm, self-abuse.
None of us had this education at school.
No.
I see mental health education as more important than learning to read and write
Yeah.
and add up.
Yeah.
That it's crucial, because we are emotional by nature. We're human beings. We have all this stuff going on, yet we don't have a focus.
Yeah.
A really important part of our schooling that teaches us how to navigate the difficulties and the challenges that we face. You know, there's little bits that are put in, but you find that because parents and teachers haven't had that education as well, we're all don't know what to do.
Yeah,
And
we're all
so-
kind of flapping around.
Absolutely.
And especially with the changes, and I related to this in my introduction, is that we live in such a different world, and specifically in relation to social media.
Yes.
And I know that you've got a real, you've got some views on that, haven't you? And
Absolutely.
yeah. So
It
just
has-
tell us about how you see that impacting.
It's in young people's faces from way before they're teenagers. You know, it's a constant thing. You need to have this and you need to have that. Put this shampoo on to look better, and beautiful hair, and it's constant.
Weird
Every
eyebrows.
single arena.
Yeah.
It's not about who we are. It's about what we look like.
Yeah.
And so we get dragged in to this belief that to be accepted, we've got to be a certain weight, we've got to look a certain way, and it's all about maybe what we wear, what we've got. There's such a focus on what we have or haven't got that helps us to feel accepted by society.
And that's boys and girls, of course.
Boys and girls, absolutely. You've got
Yeah.
muscly men, you've
Yeah.
got slim, skinny women that are often airbrushed. So there's a lot of fakeness out there, but young people don't know that it is, and they see that as who they are. They want the likes. They want to put something out there and get the like. Do you know how long it is that a teenager will keep a photo up there before they take it down if they haven't got enough likes? 4 seconds.
Wow.
It's ridiculous.
That's this kind of instant gratification, instant
Absolutely,
world.
yeah.
Such pressure as well.
It's really massive pressure, and,
Yeah.
and for me, they're getting the wrong message.
Yeah.
They're out there looking for all of the acceptance, but you've got to be self-accepting.
Yes.
It's got
So
to
let's
come inwards.
then talk about what you do in Empower Education. So can you kind of give us a bit of an overview of what your program looks like? And I know that sometimes you modify it
I do, yeah.
depending on who you're talking
Yeah.
to.
So for me, it's about my program is about taking a young person on a journey of self-discovery. It's for them to look at who they are, who they believe themselves to be, because we have this belief: if I'm not thin enough, I'm too fat, I don't like myself, whatever it might be. We need to see that. We need to get them to see who they think they are, who they believe themselves to be.
So acknowledge and be aware
Absolutely.
of what's going on.
Yeah. And then actually working on the fact that the media, we bring all that in there so they can see what is being presented to them, so they get an awareness of how they're being programmed
Yes.
to be in
And
the world and
influenced.
influenced totally. And then we look at the beliefs that they've got and look at them to see whether they're limiting them
Yeah.
or whether they're actually helping them to move forward in a positive way in their life. And most of the time, they've got a lot of negative limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about education. So for me, I love to teach young people about how we work, so the brain, the mind, so how we're constructed and how our brain will go into a fight or flight situation or freeze if it's an exam paper, or if we haven't got enough likes, or if there's a lion that's just your brain can't differentiate. It puts you into that anxious or that angry state of mind very quickly. And it's about recognising this is happening and that we have an ability in another part of our brain to start to train ourselves to be able to manage the emotions, to be able to watch the thought processes. That's where, if you heard of mindfulness, that's where that comes in, because we become an observer to what's happening within us. Right from the sensations that happen when you're nervous or when you get angry, so nervous you get butterflies. It's about recognising that these are an onset of feeling worried about something before it kicks off into the fight or flight, so that the adrenaline and the cortisol is not firing through your body unless you need it to. If you're about to run a race, you need it, and you can use it to your advantage. But if you've got an exam paper or somebody's just said something unkind to you, it's about being able to navigate through that. So we teach them how to do that.
So would you do this in a kind of classroom scenario? I know you work one-to-one as well, don't you?
Yeah, so I can work with whole classes if there are teachers present. I can work with small groups, alone. I can work one-to-one. It just depends what's needed. I want to reach as many children as I can, because they need this education. I did. And I know that the children that I'm seeing that are self-harming, that are really suffering with anxiety, they just don't know what to do. Let's start thinking what we do want and focus on that.
Absolutely.
And to be able to move towards that and creating better feelings for ourselves, because our emotions are very affected by the thoughts that are being recalled from past experiences, past memories that we're not consciously aware of, but they're having a massive impact and leading us through life on an autopilot, really, on this subconscious way that we're living. It's kind of as if we're asleep, being just dragged along through life.
I mean, if you and it's very common, isn't it? If you're in a group of kids that are a bit bullying and like to damage stuff, well, that's what you end up doing. If you're in a group of kids or adults that are depressed and tired all the time, well, you attract people that are depressed and tired all the time.
Of course you do.
Yeah. And this is clearly you're even more susceptible to that when you're young. We all know that you are, the result of 5 people that you spend most time with.
Absolutely.
But of course the person that you spend most of your time with is you and your own thoughts, and those thoughts that you talk about that are so negative very much of the time, those thoughts, if you think them enough, become your beliefs.
They do.
And then your beliefs actually become your whole story and can affect the rest of your life. Like it did for you. You didn't realise what was going on.
Not at all. And I had a big story going on. Even when my sister was born, and at that point I just decided it wasn't true. I decided I wasn't loved anymore. I wasn't important, I wasn't good enough for my mum. But that's so not true. I know that now. But I didn't then, and I then lived my life believing that in every relationship that I had.
But the key to this, Jackie, is that you need help. No, I believe that nobody can do this alone. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if it's not you that they find, then find somebody else that has the expertise or the understanding or the awareness, the empathy, or whatever it is, to be able to help you through what actually is a process.
Absolutely.
And also accept that process isn't going to be an instant one. And I think this is one of the problems with this world that we live in, which is this instant gratification.
Now.
I want it now. So I've realised now that I've got this issue, so I'm going to go and do something about it, and I want to be better tomorrow. But actually, it's taken you 2 years to get to that point, or 20 years to get to that point. So as well as working with the children themselves, obviously there's some work that you will do with their parents, I'm guessing.
Essential. Because you can work with the child, but if they don't have the support of an adult, because all children need the support of an adult in their lives, constant support, because their brain's still building itself, and they, even with their emotional state, they can't regulate it themselves very easily. So
Yeah.
a parent, an educator, they're all crucial elements. And as I say, none of us have had that training
No.
when we were younger. So it's crucial to get that understanding,
Yeah.
to discover and self-accept ourselves, to be able to understand what resilience is and how to achieve it.
Would you share with us then how people can kind of connect with you so that
Yeah.
they can use your services for a start? So do you just work in the Nottingham area for
I work
now?
in the Nottingham area, but I am available through Skype,
Okay.
any of those sort of online media
Because some of
ways.
those online things are actually, for some people and particularly teenagers, they're a little bit easier to manage,
Yeah,
aren't
absolutely.
they? Because they're not quite as, you're a little bit removed, so you can
Of course.
have the benefit of the
Space for them,
technique,
yeah.
but they're not quite, because, it's embarrassing being a teenager. I remember being a teenager.
Yeah.
You don't really want to talk to anybody, to
No,
be honest, unless
that's
it's your
it.
mate,
Yeah.
And particularly if you are one of those sensitive children that we talked about. So actually, that means that you've got the availability and the potential for helping anybody with this,
Absolutely.
whether it's a child or an adult
Absolutely.
or a teacher.
Or a teacher, yeah, absolutely, because there's so much pressure in schools at the moment.
Yeah.
So much pressure.
The national curriculum, there's so much to fit in.
Yes,
isn't
that's
there?
it, and that's another element of why children are suffering from mental health. The teachers are also,
Yeah.
I could tell you statistics for teachers. I'm not going to go there today, but they are suffering
Yeah.
because of the pressures on their job to get these children at a very high academic level. But because their well-being isn't right first and the children's well-being isn't right first, they're on a very difficult path, because the fact is that when you are in a good state of mind and your well-being is good, you're going to achieve your absolute ability, because you're calm, you're not blocked. If you've got a child that has come from a very difficult home life into a school environment, they can't focus on work. You're not going to get the best out of that child until they're calm and they've let go of that adrenaline, cortisol, which is keeping them ready to fight or run. When you can bring them into that calm state of mind, then they can learn.
So how do you deal with, just explain to everybody, if you were to go into a school, would you do that as part of the day, or is it an after school session that you would do, or are head teachers now very enlightened and saying actually we need you as part of the kind of day to day?
It varies.
Right.
Sometimes it might be a staff meeting after school or an inset day for staff. It might be as an after school curriculum thing, which I do. It might be as part of the school day, so it varies. It depends on the head teacher.
Okay, so tell people how they can connect with you and how they can.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. So you can connect with me by